Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal of the observation deck window, watching the dying light of Earth's sun grow smaller with each passing hour. The evacuation ships stretched in a long line behind the Unity, their hulls scarred from the desperate escape that had cost them everything. 12 billion souls packed into vessels never meant for such journeys, fleeing a world that could no longer support life. The Cascade event had been swift and merciless. What started as unusual solar flares became something far worse when Earth's magnetic field began collapsing in ways no scientist had predicted. Radiation levels spiked beyond survival limits across 70% of the planet's surface within 6 months. The remaining habitable zones became overcrowded death traps as resources dwindled and desperation grew. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Rodriguez from behind her. "We're receiving another transmission from the lead ship. Admiral Morrison wants to know our fuel status." Sarah didn't turn from the window. "Same as an hour ago, Lieutenant. We've got maybe 3 weeks of power left. 4 if we shut down non-essential systems." She finally faced her communications officer, seeing her own exhaustion reflected in his eyes. "What's the word from the other ships?" Rodriguez checked his tablet, his expression grim. "The New Dawn is reporting engine troubles. The Hope's Light has lost 2 more passengers to radiation sickness. And the Tomorrow—" He paused. "The Tomorrow is asking permission to separate from the convoy." "Denied," Sarah said immediately. "We stay together. That was the agreement." But even as she said it, Sarah knew the agreement was born from hope rather than realistic planning. When the evacuation began, humanity had possessed 17 possible destinations, identified by long-range surveys, worlds that might support human life, though none were particularly promising. Now, 14 months into their journey through the void, they'd already passed 11 of those worlds. Each one had proven uninhabitable for different reasons: too much radiation, toxic atmospheres, or simply too far from their dying ships to reach safely. The remaining 6 destinations were scattered across different star systems, and their fuel wouldn't last long enough to reach even the closest one. The convoy had been forced to make impossible choices, splitting up to maximize their species' chances of survival. Sarah's group had volunteered for the longest shot, a system the surveys had marked as possibly habitable, with a notation that the data was incomplete. "Captain," Rodriguez said softly, "there's something else. Long-range sensors are picking up an anomaly ahead." Sarah straightened. "What kind of anomaly?" "Unknown, ma'am. It's not showing up as a stellar body or debris field. The signature is artificial." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. In all their time traveling through space, they'd encountered nothing but empty void and distant stars. The possibility of finding something artificial, potentially alien, sent a chill through everyone present. "Put it on the main screen," Sarah ordered. The display showed what appeared to be empty space, but the computer had highlighted an area where something was clearly present yet invisible to normal observation. The object was massive, easily twice the size of their largest evacuation ship, and it was moving on an intercept course. "How long until contact?" Sarah asked. "At current speeds, approximately 6 hours," reported Ensign Park from the navigation station. Sarah activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We've detected an unknown contact ahead of our position. All department heads report to the bridge immediately. All passengers remain in designated areas until further notice." Within minutes, the bridge filled with Sarah's senior staff. Chief Engineer Martinez looked like he hadn't slept in days, which was probably accurate given their ongoing power crisis. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, their chief medical officer, carried her ever-present tablet, documenting the health status of their passengers. Commander Jack Sullivan, her first officer, took his position beside her command chair, with the calm competence that had kept them all sane during the darkest moments of their journey. "Options?" Sarah asked without preamble. "We could alter course," suggested Martinez. "Put some distance between us and whatever that is." "With what fuel?" Sullivan asked. "We're already running on fumes. Any course correction significant enough to avoid contact would use up our reserves." Dr. Reeves looked up from her tablet. "We've got 4,300 passengers on this ship alone, Captain. Another 18,000 across the convoy. If this is first contact with an alien species, we need to consider what that means for our people." Sarah nodded slowly. Throughout human history, first contact with unknown civilizations had rarely gone well for the less technologically advanced party. And right now, humanity was definitely in that position. "Signal the other ships," she ordered. "Tell them what we're dealing with. Each captain makes the call for their own vessel, but I'm not running. We don't have the fuel to run, and we sure don't have anywhere else to go." The next 6 hours passed with agonizing slowness. The unknown vessel continued its approach, and gradually more details became clear. It was definitely artificial. Sleek curves that no natural process could create, composed of materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. There were no obvious weapons ports, but then again, human understanding of alien technology was exactly zero. When the vessel was close enough for visual contact, it simply appeared on their screens without warning. One moment they were looking at empty space, the next moment, an elegant ship hung motionless relative to their position. It was beautiful in a way that made Sarah's throat tight with emotion. Graceful lines that suggested speed and power, surfaces that seemed to capture and redirect starlight in patterns that almost looked intentional. "Captain," Rodriguez said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're receiving a transmission. Audio or visual?" "Both. It's in English, Captain." Sarah felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a being that was clearly not human, but not entirely alien either. Tall and slender, with skin that held hints of blue beneath what looked like silver, large eyes that seemed to hold genuine warmth, and features that were graceful without being threatening. When it spoke, the voice was melodic, but unmistakably concerned. "Greetings, travelers. I am Kithara of the Luminary. We have been observing your journey and understand that you are refugees seeking sanctuary. Your ships are failing, your people are suffering, and your destination may not provide what you need to survive." Sarah found her voice. "How do you know English?" Kithara's expression shifted to something that might have been a smile. "We have been watching your species for some time, though from a distance. We know of the catastrophe that befell your world and the courage you have shown in attempting to preserve your people. We offer assistance, if you will accept it." "What kind of assistance?" Sarah asked, acutely aware that every word of this conversation was being recorded and transmitted to the other ships in the convoy. "Your immediate needs are fuel, food, and medical supplies. These we can provide. Your greater need is for a world where your people can live and prosper. This is more complicated." The alien, Luminary, Sarah corrected herself, paused as if gathering thoughts. "There are worlds in this region of space that could support human life with modification. We possess the technology to make such modifications, but it is not a simple matter. It would require trust between our peoples, cooperation over many years, and a commitment to working together for the benefit of both our species." Commander Sullivan leaned close to Sarah's ear. "Could be a trap, Captain. Too convenient that they show up just when we need them most." Sarah nodded slightly but kept her attention on Kithara. "Why would you help us? What do you get out of it?" "An excellent question," Kithara replied. "My people have been alone in this region of space for a very long time. We are not numerous, and we have grown static. set in our ways. We have watched other species rise and fall from a distance, never making contact, never involving ourselves in their struggles. But your species—" Kithara paused again. "Your species has shown something we find remarkable. In your darkest hour, facing extinction, you did not turn on each other. You organized, you sacrificed, you worked together to save as many as possible. This speaks to a character we have rarely observed." Dr. Reeves stepped forward. "Our people are dying. We have limited medical supplies, inadequate food stores, and our life support systems are failing. If you can help with these immediate needs, we would be grateful for the chance to discuss longer-term arrangements." Kithara nodded. "Of course, we will begin transfers immediately. May I come aboard your vessel to meet with your leadership in person? I believe face-to-face communication will be more productive than speaking across the void." Sarah glanced around the bridge. Her senior staff looked back at her, and she saw the same mix of hope and caution in their eyes that she felt in her own chest. This could be salvation for humanity, or it could be something far worse. But with fuel running low and their people dying, did they really have a choice? "You may come aboard," she said. "Docking Bay 2. I'll meet you there personally." "Thank you, Captain Chen. I look forward to our meeting." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sarah realized that her hands were shaking slightly and clasped them behind her back to hide the tremor. "Well," said Sullivan, "that just happened." "Get security teams to Docking Bay 2, Sarah ordered. "Full honor guard formation, but weapons holstered. Dr. Reeves, I want you there for medical assessment. Martinez, start preparing lists of our most critical supply needs. Rodriguez, send word to the convoy. First contact successful, proceeding with caution." As her crew scattered to their tasks, Sarah remained on the bridge for a moment longer, looking out at the Luminary ship. It hung in space like a work of art, beautiful and mysterious, and potentially the salvation of humanity. Or their doom. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in Docking Bay 2, watching a small craft approach from the luminary vessel. It was just as elegant as its parent ship, moving with fluid grace that seemed to defy physics as she understood it. The airlock sealed with a soft hiss, and moments later, Kithara stepped into the bay. In person, the luminary was even more impressive than on the screen. Nearly 7 feet tall, moving with perfect balance and grace, but what struck Sarah most was the genuine warmth in those large, dark eyes. This being radiated compassion in a way that was impossible to fake. "Captain Chen," Kithara said, offering what looked like a formal bow. "Thank you for allowing me aboard your vessel. I know this must be difficult for you and your people." "It is," Sarah admitted, "but we're grateful for any help you can offer. Our situation is—" She gestured helplessly. "Desperate," Kithara finished gently. "Yes, we understand. Come, let me show you what we can do." Kithara produced a small device from somewhere in the flowing garments she wore and activated it. A holographic display appeared in the air between them, showing detailed technical specifications that made Chief Martinez gasp audibly. "Fuel specifications for your engines," Kithara explained. "We can synthesize compatible compounds that will extend your operating life by months rather than weeks. Medical supplies tailored to human biochemistry. We have been observing your people long enough to understand your biological needs. Food synthesis patterns that will provide proper nutrition while being appealing to human palates." Dr. Reeves stepped closer to examine the medical data. This is exactly what we need. How is this possible? How do you know so much about us?" "We have been watching your species for over 2 centuries, Kithara said. "We study emerging civilizations, though we rarely make contact. Usually we observe and learn, but do not interfere. Your situation, however, is extraordinary." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. You've been watching us for 200 years? Why didn't you make contact before? Because contact changes everything, Kithara replied simply. Once two species meet, their destinies become intertwined. We have seen this pattern many times. Some species benefit from such contact, others are destroyed by it. We have learned to be very careful about when and how we reveal ourselves. But you're revealing yourselves now, Sullivan observed. Yes, because your species has demonstrated something we have never seen before. Kithara's expression became more intense, more focused. In our observations of other civilizations, when faced with extinction-level events, intelligent species typically respond in predictable ways. They fragment. They fight over resources. The strong prey upon the weak. Survival becomes individual rather than collective. The luminary gestured toward the walls of the ship around them. But humans, when your world became uninhabitable, you organized the largest rescue operation in your planet's history. You shared resources. You prioritized the survival of children, the elderly, the vulnerable. You worked together across national and cultural boundaries in ways you had never managed before. This level of cooperation in the face of species-level extinction is unprecedented in our experience. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the ship's life support. We're not perfect. There was fighting, there was panic, there were failures. Of course, Kithara agreed. But the overwhelming response was cooperation, unity, a determination to save not just individuals or groups, but humanity itself. This is why we have chosen to make contact now. This is why we offer our assistance. Dr. Reeves looked up from the medical data she'd been studying. What exactly are you proposing for the long term? You mentioned worlds that could be modified for human habitation? Kithara nodded and adjusted the holographic display. Now it showed a star chart with several worlds highlighted in different colors. There are 14 systems within range of your current fuel capacity plus what we can provide. 7 contain worlds that could support human life with minimal terraforming. 3 others could be made habitable with more extensive modifications. The remaining 4 would serve as mining and manufacturing bases to support the terraforming efforts. Chief Martinez whistled low. That's not just helping us find a new home. That's helping us build a new civilization. Yes, Kithara said simply. It is. The docking bay fell silent except for the background hum of ship systems. Sarah looked around at her crew, seeing wonder and hope in their faces for the first time since leaving Earth. But she also saw caution, and she was glad for it. This offer was too good to be true, which meant there had to be more to it. What do you want in return? She asked. Kithara's expression shifted to something that might have been appreciation. Direct and practical, I approve. In return, we ask for partnership. We are an old species, Captain Chen. Very old. We have achieved much, but we have also become stagnant. We have forgotten how to grow, how to change, how to face new challenges with creativity and determination. We need teachers who can show us these things again. You want us to teach you? Sullivan asked, clearly surprised. Your species possesses qualities that ours has lost over the millennia. Adaptability. Innovation born from necessity. The ability to find hope in hopeless situations. Most importantly, the capacity for rapid cultural evolution when circumstances demand it. We need to learn these skills again, before our own civilization stagnates into extinction. Sarah felt pieces clicking together in her mind. This isn't just about helping refugees. You're investing in our species because you think we can help save yours. Perhaps, Kithara acknowledged. Or perhaps we will simply learn to be more than we currently are. Either outcome would justify the resources we will commit to your survival and prosperity. The holographic display shifted again, showing detailed plans for what looked like massive orbital stations around one of the highlighted worlds. The process would take approximately 50 of your years to complete the primary terraforming. During that time, your people would live in orbital habitats that we will help you construct. You would work alongside our people, sharing knowledge and techniques, building both a new world for humanity and a new relationship between our species. Dr. Reeves was now practically vibrating with excitement as she studied the technical specifications. The life support systems, the medical facilities. This is beyond anything we could have hoped for. Captain, with this level of support, we wouldn't just survive. We could thrive. Sarah looked at the display showing what would essentially be a new branch of human civilization, supported by alien technology, but built by human hands and human determination. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. "I need to discuss this with the other ship captains," she said. "This is a decision that affects every human in the convoy." "Of course," Cathara agreed. "Take the time you need. In the meantime, we will begin providing the emergency supplies your ships require. No conditions, no obligations. Your people need help now, and we will provide it regardless of your decision about long-term cooperation." And that, Sarah realized, might have been the most alien thing Cathara had said yet. The idea of giving aid without expecting anything in return, of helping simply because help was needed. It was both utterly foreign and absolutely right. "Thank you," she said, and meant it in a way that went deeper than words could express. Kithra bowed again. "I will return to my ship and begin preparing the supply transfers. When you are ready to discuss our proposal further, you need only call." As the Luminari delegation prepared to leave, Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. Hope, certainly, stronger than she'd felt since leaving Earth. Caution, because nothing this good came without a price. But underneath both of those feelings was something she hadn't expected, a sense of connection. The Luminari weren't just offering to save humanity. They were offering to become part of humanity's story, to bind their fate to human fate in a way that would transform both species. It was the kind of partnership that existed in the best dreams of philosophers and the worst nightmares of xenophobes. As Kithara's ship moved away to begin organizing supply transfers, Sarah realized that humanity was about to face its greatest test yet. Not the test of survival. The Luminari had probably just solved that problem. No, this would be a test of character. Would humanity prove worthy of the trust that had been placed in them? Would they honor the partnership that was being offered, or would they take what they needed and forget the debt they owed? Looking out at the other ships in the convoy, each one carrying thousands of human souls who were depending on her decisions, Sarah made a silent promise. Whatever came next, humanity would not forget who had reached out a hand when they were drowning in the void. They would not forget who had offered hope when hope was gone. And maybe, just maybe, that loyalty would prove to be the key to something greater than either species could achieve alone. 3 months into the partnership, Dr. James Morrison stood in what the humans had dubbed the workshop, a massive section of the luminary ship that had been converted into a joint research and construction facility. Around him, humans and Luminari worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. Morrison watched as Lieutenant Sarah Kim, barely 25 and fresh from Earth's engineering corps, explained fluid dynamics to a Luminari scientist who was probably older than human civilization. The alien listened with intense focus, occasionally asking questions that made Kim pause and think harder about concepts she thought she understood completely. "Fascinating," the Luminari named Velthros murmured. "Your species approaches problems from directions we would never consider. This brute force method, it should not work, yet the results are undeniable." Kim grinned. "Sometimes the elegant solution isn't the best solution. Sometimes you just need to make something work with what you've got." Morrison smiled at the exchange. It perfectly captured what had been happening throughout the fleet over the past months. The Luminary had kept their word about supplies. No human ship was in danger of running out of fuel, food, or medical supplies. But more than that, they'd opened their doors to human curiosity and human ingenuity in ways that were transforming both species. "Dr. Morrison," came a voice behind him. He turned to see Kythera approaching, carrying a tablet that displayed what looked like engineering schematics. "Kythera," Morrison nodded. "How are the habitat designs coming along?" The Luminary's expression was troubled. "That is what I wish to discuss with you. We have encountered a problem." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Over the months, he'd learned that when Kythera looked worried, it was usually about something significant. "What kind of problem?" "The world we selected for initial terraforming, Kepler Prime, as your people have named it, has proven more complex than our preliminary surveys indicated." Kythera activated the tablet, showing a detailed planetary analysis. "The atmosphere can be modified as planned, the temperature and pressure adjustments are feasible, but there is an issue with the planet's magnetic field." Morrison studied the data, his background in planetary sciences helping him understand the implications. "It's fluctuating?" "Severely. The planet's core is undergoing changes that we did not predict. The magnetic field variations would make the terraforming process unpredictable and potentially dangerous. We could stabilize it, but it would require—" Kythera paused. "It would require completely rethinking our approach." "How long would that take?" "With our methods, perhaps 2 centuries rather than 50 years. Morrison felt the weight of that statement settle on his shoulders. 2 centuries meant multiple human generations living in space, dependent on Luminary support for their basic survival. It changed everything about the partnership dynamic. "There might be another option," Kythera continued. "But it would require a level of cooperation and risk-taking that goes beyond anything we have attempted before." "I'm listening." Kythera gestured toward a section of the workshop where a mixed team of humans and Luminari were working on what looked like a massive engine component. "Your people have been suggesting modifications to our terraforming technology, improvements based on human engineering principles. Most of these suggestions are unconventional." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Unconventional how?" "Dangerous, unpredictable, requiring constant adjustment and maintenance rather than the set-and-forget systems we prefer." Kythera's expression shifted to something that might have been admiration. "But they might work in a fraction of the time." "Show me." Kythera led him across the workshop to where Chief Engineer Martinez was deep in discussion with 3 Luminary scientists. Their voices were animated with hand gestures and quick sketches being drawn on shared tablets. "The problem," Martinez was saying, "is that you're thinking too big. You want to reshape the entire planet's magnetic field at once. But what if we did it in stages? Build localized stabilization fields first, expand them gradually?" One of the Luminary scientists, whom Morrison recognized as Zephys, looked skeptical. "The power requirements would be enormous. The risk of cascade failures would be manageable if we built redundancy into every system," Martinez interrupted. "Look, I know it's not elegant, but elegance doesn't always work when you're dealing with chaotic systems." Kythera approached the group. "Chief Martinez, would you explain your concept to Dr. Morrison?" Martinez looked up, his eyes bright with the kind of excitement Morrison had seen in engineers who'd found a solution to an impossible problem. "Doc, we're talking about completely revolutionizing terraforming technology. Instead of the Luminary approach, which is basically set up a few massive systems and let them run for decades, we're proposing a network of smaller, interconnected systems that can adapt in real time." "That sounds incredibly complex," Morrison observed. "It is," Martinez agreed, "but it's also resilient. If one component fails, the others compensate. If conditions change, the network adjusts. It's messy, it's complicated. It requires constant monitoring, but it could terraform a world in 15 years instead of 50. Zephys made a sound that Morrison had learned was the luminary equivalent of a worried sigh. The number of things that could go wrong is matched by the number of things that could go right, Martinez countered. And here's the kicker. This approach could work on worlds that your traditional methods can't handle, worlds with unstable cores, unusual atmospheric compositions, extreme weather patterns. We're not just talking about making Kepler Prime habitable. We're talking about opening up dozens of worlds that were previously considered impossible to terraform. Morrison felt pieces clicking together in his mind. You're not just proposing to solve our immediate problem. You're proposing to revolutionize how terraforming works. Exactly, Martinez said. But here's the thing. It only works with mixed crews. Humans don't have the theoretical knowledge to design the core systems. Luminari don't have the practical experience to make the adaptive components work reliably. You need both species working together, not just during the design phase, but throughout the entire terraforming process. Cathara's expression was unreadable. It would mean committing both our species to a partnership that could last centuries. The level of interdependence would be unprecedented. Morrison looked around at the workshop, at humans and Luminari, working together with an enthusiasm and productivity that neither species could have achieved alone. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Before Cathara could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the workshop. Not the harsh, urgent alarms that meant immediate danger, but the steady, attention-getting tone that indicated an important announcement. All personnel, please report to designated assembly areas, came Admiral Foster's voice over the communication system. We have received a priority transmission from the Sol system. Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. Sol system meant Earth, or what was left of it. 20 minutes later, the entire human population of the workshop had gathered in the main assembly area, with their luminary colleagues standing respectfully nearby. Admiral Foster stood at the front of the room, her expression grave. I've received a transmission from the monitoring stations we left in the Sol system, she began without preamble. Earth's magnetic field has collapsed completely. The radiation levels are now lethal across the entire planetary surface. There are no survivors. The silence that followed was profound and terrible. Morrison closed his eyes, feeling the weight of finality settle on his chest. Earth, humanity's birth world, their origin point, the planet that had shaped everything they were, was truly dead. However, Foster continued, the message also contained long-range sensor data about other evacuation fleets. The Australia fleet reached Proxima Centauri and is attempting to establish a colony on Proxima b. The European coalition fleet has settled on a world in the Wolf 359 system. The Asian Alliance fleet, she paused. The Asian Alliance fleet is in trouble. Their destination proved uninhabitable, and they're requesting assistance. Morrison opened his eyes, looking around at the faces of his fellow refugees. He saw grief, but he also saw something else. Determination. Lieutenant Kim raised her hand. Ma'am, what kind of assistance are they requesting? Supply support, primarily, but they're also asking for technical advice on planetary engineering. Apparently, their target world could be made habitable, but they lack the resources and knowledge to do it. Morrison found himself looking at Cathara, who had moved closer during the announcement. The luminary's expression was thoughtful, almost calculating. Admiral, came another voice from the crowd. Morrison recognized Dr. Rebecca Santos, one of their best xenobiologists. What's their current situation? Population? Resources? Timeline? Approximately 40,000 survivors. Limited supplies? Maybe 6 months left. The world they're trying to settle has a toxic atmosphere, but good mineral resources and adequate solar radiation for terraforming. Santos nodded. With the right technology and approach, that's definitely workable. Morrison realized where this was heading and felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. Admiral, Are we considering offering assistance? Foster looked directly at him. Dr. Morrison, that depends on several factors. Do we have the resources to help? Do we have the technology? And most importantly, can we afford to divert resources from our own survival efforts? Before Morrison could answer, Kythera stepped forward. Admiral Foster, may I speak? Foster nodded. Of course. This situation presents an opportunity for both our species, Kythera said, her melodic voice carrying easily across the assembly area. The terraforming technology your people have been developing with us, the adaptive network approach, could save the Asian Alliance fleet. But more than that, it could serve as a test case for the new techniques. Martinez caught on immediately. You're talking about using them as a proving ground for the hybrid terraforming technology. With their full knowledge and consent, yes, Kythera confirmed. If the new approach works there, we know it will work on Kepler Prime and other worlds. If it fails, we learn from that failure without risking our primary terraforming effort. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. You're talking about experimenting on desperate people. No, Kythera said firmly. I am talking about offering desperate people a chance at survival using technology that might not otherwise exist for decades. The alternative is that they die while we perfect our techniques. Dr. Santos stepped forward. What would this involve, practically speaking? Kythera consulted her tablet. A joint expedition, mixed crew of humans and Luminari, equipped with prototype terraforming equipment. The mission would take approximately 2 years, 1 year to reach the Asian Alliance fleet, 1 year to implement the terraforming systems. That's time away from our own terraforming project, Admiral Foster pointed out. Yes, Kythera agreed. But the knowledge gained would accelerate our work on Kepler Prime by years, and... She paused, her expression becoming more intense. It would demonstrate something important about the partnership between our species. Morrison felt everyone's attention focus on Kythera. What do you mean? My people have been discussing your species among ourselves. We are impressed by your technical innovation, your adaptability, your willingness to work with us as equals rather than supplicants. But there has been some concern about whether humans can be truly trusted as long-term partners. The assembly fell silent. Morrison felt anger rising in his chest. Concern about what, exactly? Whether humans, when faced with difficult choices, will prioritize their own survival above partnership obligations, Kythera said bluntly. It is not an unreasonable concern. Most species would do exactly that. Admiral Foster's voice was carefully controlled when she replied. And you see this situation as a test? I see it as an opportunity for humans to demonstrate who they truly are, Kythera corrected. You could focus entirely on your own survival, using all available resources for your own terraforming project. Or you could risk some of those resources to save other humans who cannot save themselves. The choice will tell us much about your species' character. Morrison looked around at his fellow humans and saw understanding dawning on their faces. This wasn't just about saving the Asian Alliance fleet. This was about proving that humanity deserved the partnership they'd been offered. Lieutenant Kim raised her hand again. What's the success rate for this experimental terraforming approach? Kythera's expression became more troubled. Unknown. We have theoretical models that suggest high probability of success, but the approach is so new that we have no practical experience with it. So we could be volunteering for a mission that fails and kills everyone involved, Martinez observed. Yes, Kythera said simply. The assembly erupted in quiet conversations as people discussed the implications. Morrison found himself thinking about loyalty and character, about what it meant to be human in a universe that was vast and dangerous and largely indifferent to their survival. After several minutes, Admiral Foster called for order. I need to make a decision about this, and I need to make it soon. The Asian Alliance fleet doesn't have months to wait while we debate. Dr. Santos stepped forward. Admiral, I volunteer for the mission. So do I, Martinez added immediately. Lieutenant Kim nodded firmly. Count me in. One by one, other voices joined them. Morrison felt a warmth spreading through his chest as he watched his colleagues volunteer for a mission that could easily kill them, all to save people they'd never met. When the volunteers were done speaking, Admiral Foster looked around the assembly. Dr. Morrison, as senior scientist, what's your recommendation? Morrison realized that everyone was looking at him, humans and Luminary alike. The weight of the moment settled on his shoulders, but somehow it didn't feel heavy. It felt right. Admiral, I recommend we approve the mission. Not just because it's the right thing to do, though it is. Not just because it will advance terraforming technology, though it will. But because this is who we are. He gestured toward the volunteers. Humans don't leave other humans behind when we can help them. We don't prioritize our own safety above our obligations to others. And we honor our partnerships even when it's difficult. He turned to look directly at Kythera. You want to know if humans can be trusted as long-term partners? The answer is yes. But that trust runs both ways. We're about to risk human lives to prove our character. I hope the Luminari are prepared to do the same. Kythera's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. Dr. Morrison, I will be leading the Luminary contingent on this mission personally. The warmth in Morrison's chest expanded into something approaching joy. Then I guess we're doing this. Admiral Foster nodded slowly. Very well. Dr. Morrison, you'll lead the human scientific team. Chief Martinez, you're in charge of engineering. Lieutenant Kim, you'll handle technical implementation. Dr. Santos, xenobiology and environmental assessment. She paused. I want volunteers only. No pressure, no mandatory assignments. Anyone who wants to step back can do so with no questions asked. Nobody stepped back. 3 weeks later, the joint expedition ship Harmony launched from the human convoy, carrying 40 humans and 20 Luminari toward what might be salvation for the Asian Alliance fleet, or disaster for everyone involved. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human ingenuity making Luminari technology more adaptable, Luminari science making human innovations actually work. Morrison stood in the observation lounge as they pulled away from the convoy, watching the other human ships grow smaller in the distance. Kythera joined him at the viewport. Having second thoughts, the Luminary asked. Morrison considered the question. About the mission? No. About the technology? Maybe. About whether we'll all come back alive? He paused. Definitely. But you still choose to go. Of course. Morrison looked at his alien partner, this being who had become not just an ally, but something approaching a friend. You offered to save our species when you could have just watched us die. The least we can do is live up to the trust you've placed in us. Kythera made the sound that Morrison had learned was luminary laughter. Dr. Morrison, I believe you misunderstand the situation. How so? You think we are testing whether humans deserve our partnership. But the truth is, your species has already proven its worth. This mission is not a test of human character. Kythera's expression became more serious. It is a demonstration of what our two species can accomplish together, and if it succeeds, it will be the foundation for something neither of our peoples has ever experienced before. Which is a true symbiotic relationship between species, not conquest, not dependence, not even simple cooperation. True symbiosis, where both species become more than they could ever be alone. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. But it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. They were heading into danger to save people they'd never met, using technology that might not work, in partnership with aliens who had every reason to protect their own interests first. and somehow, Morrison had never felt more optimistic about humanity's future. The Harmony jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying its mixed crew toward an uncertain destiny and a chance to prove that loyalty, properly applied, might indeed be powerful enough to transform galaxies. 2 years and 3 months after leaving the human convoy, Dr. James Morrison stood on the surface of what had once been a toxic, uninhabitable world. Now, breathable air moved through his lungs while he watched children, human children, play in gardens that shouldn't have been possible. The transformation of refuge, as the Asian Alliance fleet had named their new world, had exceeded everyone's expectations. The hybrid terraforming technology hadn't just worked. It had worked better than either humans or Luminari had dared hope. What should have taken 15 years had been accomplished in 18 months. "Dr. Morrison," came a familiar voice. He turned to see Captain Lisa Jang approaching, her face bearing the kind of deep contentment that came from seeing one's people not just survive, but thrive. "Captain Jang?" Morrison replied with a genuine smile. "How are the new settlements coming along?" "Beyond our wildest dreams," Zhang said, gesturing toward the horizon where construction teams were building what would become the first major human city on refuge. "The mineral extraction is ahead of schedule. The agricultural zones are producing beyond capacity, and we've had 0 major system failures in the terraforming network." Morrison nodded, but he could see something else in Zhang's expression. "There's something you want to discuss." "The Galactic Council has requested a meeting," Zhang said quietly. "They want to understand what happened here." Morrison felt a familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. The Galactic Council was a loose confederation of advanced species that the Luminari had told them about during the terraforming project. According to Kithara, most Council species maintained careful distances from each other, sharing information but avoiding the kind of deep cooperation that humans and Luminari had developed. "When?" Morrison asked. 3 days. Their delegation is already en route." Zhang's expression became more serious. "Dr. Morrison, they're not just interested in our terraforming success. They're asking questions about the broader partnership between humans and Luminari." Before Morrison could respond, he heard the distinctive sound of a Luminari transport approaching. He looked up to see a familiar ship descending toward the landing pad, and felt the warm anticipation that came with seeing old friends. Minutes later, Kithara emerged from the transport, followed by a team of luminary scientists and engineers. But what caught Morrison's attention was the group of beings who came after them, clearly not luminary, but also clearly advanced aliens representing several different species. "The advanced delegation," Zhang murmured. "I guess they were more eager to see our work than we thought." Morrison approached the group as they gathered near the landing pad. Kithara saw him coming and made the gesture that he'd learned was a luminary expression of warm greeting between close colleagues. "Dr. Morrison," Kithara said, "I would like you to meet some representatives of the Galactic Council. This is Vexhan of the Torthak Collective, Resonance of Deep Waters from the Aquatic Alliance, and Scholar Genthvar from the Crystalline Assembly." Each being was radically different from the others. Vexhan was tall and metallic with multiple arms. Resonance of Deep Waters appeared to be some kind of aquatic creature in an environmental suit, and Scholar Genthvar looked like a living crystal formation. Yet they all carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of scientists and diplomats. "Honored to meet you all," Morrison said, inclining his head in what he hoped was an appropriately respectful greeting. Vexhan spoke first, its voice coming through a translation device that gave it a slightly mechanical quality. "Dr. Morrison, we have come to understand the work accomplished here. What you and the Luminari have achieved challenges many assumptions about interspecies cooperation." "How so?" Morrison asked, genuinely curious. Scholar Genthvar responded, its crystalline structure shifting colors as it spoke. In our experience, successful terraforming requires either complete technological dominance by one species or careful separation of responsibilities with minimal integration. What you have done here suggests a third path. Resonance of deep waters made a sound like flowing water that the translator rendered as agreement. The level of integration between human and luminary knowledge systems is unprecedented. Most species maintain distinct technological barriers to prevent dependency or exploitation. Morrison glanced at Kythera, who made a subtle gesture that he interpreted as encouragement to speak freely. "With respect," Morrison said, "I think you might be looking at this from the wrong perspective. We didn't integrate our technologies to avoid dependency. We integrated them because dependency isn't necessarily a bad thing." The alien delegation went very still. Morrison realized he'd said something that challenged their fundamental assumptions about interspecies relations. Vexhan's metallic features shifted in what might have been confusion. "Could you elaborate on that statement?" Morrison looked around at the world they'd helped create. The thriving settlements, the children playing in impossible gardens, the successful fusion of human and luminary knowledge that had made it all possible. "Every species we've heard about seems to approach interspecies contact from a position of fear," Morrison said. "Fear of being exploited, fear of becoming dependent, fear of losing their unique identity. But humans have learned something different." He gestured toward a nearby construction site, where humans and luminari were working side by side on what would become a research complex. "We learned that the right kind of dependency makes you stronger, not weaker. When you truly trust another species, when you're willing to become interdependent with them, you don't lose your identity, you expand it." Scholar Genthvar's crystal structure brightened. "You are suggesting that interdependence is preferable to independence?" "I'm suggesting that interdependence with the right partners is preferable to isolation," Morrison clarified. "Look at what we've accomplished here. Neither humans nor luminary could have terraformed this world alone. The luminary had the theoretical knowledge, but lacked the adaptability to handle chaotic systems. Humans had the practical ingenuity, but lacked the advanced science to make it work on a planetary scale." Kythera stepped forward. "But together, we created something that neither species could have imagined alone. The hybrid terraforming system doesn't just combine our technologies, it creates new possibilities that didn't exist before." Captain Zhang, who had been listening from nearby, approached the group. "Dr. Morrison, perhaps our guests would like to see the monitoring center. I think a demonstration would be more effective than explanations." Morrison nodded. "Excellent idea." 30 minutes later, the delegation stood in the heart of the terraforming control center, watching real-time displays that showed the planet's atmospheric, geological, and biological systems. The complexity was staggering. Thousands of interconnected systems working together to maintain and improve planetary conditions. "This is impossible," Vexhan said flatly. "The computational requirements alone should overwhelm any control system." Lieutenant Kim, now wearing the insignia of a full commander after her exceptional work on Refuge, looked up from her monitoring station. "It would overwhelm a traditional control system. But we're not using traditional control. We're using adaptive networking." She gestured to the displays around them. "The system doesn't try to control everything from a central processor. Instead, every component communicates with every other component, sharing data and making local adjustments based on global parameters. It's like..." She paused, searching for an analogy. "It's like the difference between a dictatorship and a democracy. Instead of one central authority making all decisions, thousands of systems vote on how to respond to changing conditions." Resonance of deep waters made the flowing sound that indicated deep thought. Such a system would require unprecedented cooperation between the organic and technological components. "Exactly," Commander Kim agreed. And that's where human luminary cooperation becomes essential. Humans are good at building robust, adaptive mechanical systems. Luminari are excellent at creating sophisticated organic interfaces. Neither approach works alone, but together, they create something revolutionary. Scholar Genthvar moved closer to one of the displays. Its crystalline structure flickering with what Morrison had learned indicated intense interest. These biological components, they are actually participating in system decisions? Kithara nodded. The terraforming organisms we introduce don't just follow programmed instructions. They respond to environmental changes and communicate those responses to the technological systems, which adjust accordingly. The planet itself is participating in its own transformation. Morrison watched the alien delegation process this information, seeing varying degrees of amazement and concern on their faces. He realized they were witnessing something that challenged fundamental assumptions about how advanced civilizations should interact with each other and with planetary systems. "There's something else," Morrison said quietly. "Something we discovered during the terraforming process that we weren't expecting." Vexhan's multiple arms gestured in what the translator indicated was a request for more information. "The hybrid systems we developed here, they're not just faster and more efficient than traditional terraforming, they're also incredibly robust against the kind of disruptions that destroy most terraforming projects." Morrison activated a historical display showing how Refuge's systems had responded to various crises during the transformation process. 3 months ago, we had a massive solar flare that should have destroyed the atmospheric processors. 6 months before that, seismic activity that should have destabilized the climate control network. Each time, the hybrid systems adapted and compensated in ways that surprised even us. "What you're describing," Scholar Genthvar said slowly, "is a terraforming approach that could work on worlds previously considered impossible to modify." "That's exactly what it is," Commander Kim confirmed. "And we've already identified 17 worlds in this region of space that could support human luminary colonies using these techniques." The silence that followed was profound. Morrison could see the implications dawning on the alien delegation. Not just 17 new worlds for humans, but a completely new approach to planetary engineering that could benefit every species in the galaxy. Resonance of Deep Waters was the first to speak. "You are describing a technology that could revolutionize how civilizations expand through space." "We're describing a philosophy that could revolutionize how civilizations relate to each other," Morrison corrected gently. "The technology is just the result of that philosophy." Vexhan's metallic features shifted in what Morrison was beginning to recognize as deep consideration. "Dr. Morrison, what would your species require to share this technology with other civilizations?" Morrison felt the weight of the question. This was the moment that could determine humanity's place in galactic civilization for generations to come. "We don't want to share the technology," Morrison said, and saw alarm flicker across several faces. "We want to share the process." He gestured toward a nearby work area where humans and Luminari were collaborating on design modifications for the next terraforming project. "This approach only works with genuine partnership. You can't just take our designs and build your own systems. You have to work with other species, trust them. Become interdependent with them. The technology is just the tool. The partnership is what makes it work." Kithara stepped closer to Morrison, her expression radiating approval. "Dr. Morrison is correct. We have already begun planning the next phase of human luminary expansion. 17 worlds, each one requiring mixed crews, shared knowledge, and genuine cooperation between our species." "But," Morrison continued, "we've also been discussing the possibility of expanding the partnership model. What if other species wanted to join the terraforming projects? What if the hybrid approach could incorporate 3 species, or 4, or more?" Scholar Genthvar's crystal structure blazed with sudden light. "You are proposing the formation of multi-species colonies?" "We're proposing the formation of multi-species civilizations," Morrison said firmly. "Not just cooperation when convenient, but genuine integration where each species contributes their strengths and all species benefit from the combined result." The alien delegation exchanged what Morrison assumed were communications in their various languages. When they turned back to the humans and Luminari, their body language had shifted noticeably. Vexhan spoke first. "The Torthak Collective has struggled with terraforming projects for over 2 centuries. Our worlds are functional but not thriving. We would be interested in exploring partnership possibilities." Resonance of deep waters made a complex series of sounds that the translator indicated as formal diplomatic interest. "The Aquatic Alliance has unique expertise in marine ecosystem development. Such knowledge might complement human and Luminari strengths." Scholar Genthvar was practically glowing. "The crystalline assembly possesses mineral sciences that could accelerate planetary development significantly. We would welcome the opportunity to contribute to such projects." Morrison felt a profound sense of vertigo as the implications hit him. They'd started with one desperate human fleet looking for survival. Now they were potentially creating a galactic civilization based on voluntary interdependence rather than competitive isolation. "There would be conditions," Morrison said carefully. "This approach requires genuine commitment to partnership. No hidden agendas, no exploitation, no backing out when things get difficult. Every species would need to contribute their best people, their best knowledge, their full commitment to making the partnerships work. And if conflicts arise between partners?" Vexhan asked practically. Kithara answered. "They will arise. Humans and Luminari have had disagreements, misunderstandings, moments of frustration. But we work through them because we are committed to the partnership itself, not just to what we get from it." Captain Zhang stepped forward. "There's something else you should understand. This approach changes how species evolve culturally. Working this closely with Luminari has changed how humans think about problems, how we approach challenges, even how we understand ourselves. We're not the same species we were 3 years ago. And Luminari civilization has been similarly transformed," Kithara added. "We have rediscovered creativity, adaptability, and hope that we thought we had lost forever. The partnership has made us more than we were." Morrison watched the alien delegation absorb this information. He realized they were at a crossroads that could determine the future of galactic civilization. The old model of careful distance between species was safe, but limiting. The new model of deep partnership was risky, but potentially transformative on an unprecedented scale. 6 months later, Morrison stood in the observation lounge of the New Harmony, watching the construction of what would become the first truly multi-species world in galactic history. 5 different civilizations were working together to terraform a planet that would house integrated colonies from all participating species. Kithara joined him at the viewport, as she had so many times before during their long partnership. "Any regrets?" she asked, using the informal human phrase she'd learned to love. Morrison considered the question as he watched Torthak heavy construction machines working alongside Luminari bioengineers and human adaptive systems, all coordinated by crystalline assembly computational networks and enhanced by Aquatic Alliance ecosystem specialists. About leaving Earth? No. Earth was dying regardless of what we did. About the risks we took with experimental technology? No. The results speak for themselves. Morrison paused. About trusting the Luminari when you first offered to help? Definitely not. Kithara made the sound that was Luminary laughter. "Dr. Morrison, I believe you have misunderstood something fundamental about our relationship." "What's that?" "You speak as though humans took a risk by trusting us. But the truth is, both our species took a leap of faith together. The risk was mutual, the trust was mutual, and the transformation has been mutual." Morrison nodded, watching ships from 5 different civilizations working in harmony to create something that no single species could have imagined. Do you think this will spread? Beyond the 17 worlds, beyond our current partners? I believe, Kithara said slowly, that we have demonstrated something unprecedented in galactic history. We have proven that species can choose to become more than they are through partnership rather than conquest. Word of that achievement will spread. Morrison felt a deep satisfaction settle in his chest. They'd started with desperate refugees looking for survival. They'd found not just survival, but a new model for how civilizations could relate to each other. Kithara, he said, I think humans are going to be very good at keeping their promises to their benefactors. And I think, Kithara replied, that the galaxy is about to discover what happens when species choose cooperation over competition, interdependence over isolation, and shared growth over individual advantage. Below them, the first multi-species world continued taking shape, its success radiating outward like ripples across the galaxy, carrying with it the message that sometimes the greatest transformations begin with simple acts of loyalty and trust.